Okay, so the government spent a week hiding the names of two guys who shot somebody at least 10 times.
The identities of two federal agents who were involved in the shooting of Alex Pretti were made public.
They're identified as 43-year-old Jesus Ochoa and 35-year-old Raimundo Gutierrez.
And when you find out why they were hiding these names, it somehow gets dumber and worse at the same time.
There's this thing called doxing, and the safety of our employees is very important to us. So we're going to keep those employees safe.
And real quick, I'm Lauren Paritra. This is Willa Paritra. Please take a moment to subscribe. We currently have a lead on Katie Miller, who, if you're new here, is married to Stephen Little Bitch Miller, the pale white nationalist from Santa Monica. She's building a podcast on the backs of kidnapped children and immigrants. So consider every sub, every hype, every comment, every like, share, an F you to Katie and Stephen Little Bitch Miller. Okay, and Will is on one today, so pardon us. So we know a nurse got shot and killed in Minneapolis. We saw it. It was a very public execution by the state. Federal agents fired, according to ProPublica, approximately 10 times. The nurse died. Then the government decided that the best course of action was to tell absolutely nobody who did it. Not the mayor, not even the governor, not Congress, not the public, certainly not the public, just complete radio silence while thousands of people continue to protest in freezing temperatures, asking the very reasonable question, who did that? So for a week, officials gave speeches about how the nurse was violent and dangerous and resisted arrest.
This individual showed up to a law enforcement operation with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence.
They called him a would-be assassin. That's a direct quote from Stephen Little Bitch Miller. They said agents feared for their lives. And the whole time, they refused to actually tell us who pulled the trigger, which is a fascinating choice when they're claiming self-defense here. Usually when you're defending yourself, you want people to know who you are, you know? Otherwise, it just kind of looks a little sus. So the FBI wouldn't comment, the CPB wouldn't release names. Minneapolis officials didn't have the information, and the Minnesota governor's office didn't have the information, and Democratic lawmakers accused the Justice Department of covering up evidence and blocking state investigators. Then ProPublica released the names.
Joining me now is investigative reporter behind that story that identified the agents. It's David McSwain. Thanks so much for joining us.
And what we do know is Ochoa joined in 2018. It was an aspiration of his for quite some time, according to his ex-wife, who I spoke with directly. And Gutierrez, I believe, joined in 2014.
Jesus Ochoa and Raimundo Gutierrez, two Border Patrol agents. One joined in 2018, the other in 2014, both from South Texas, both assigned to something called Operation Metro Surge, which sounds like an energy drink if I've ever heard one, but it's actually an immigration enforcement dragnet that sent scores of armed and masked agents across Minneapolis. Masked agents, federal law enforcement wearing coverings so nobody could identify them. And none of this is normal or fine. And it definitely is not how we should accept legitimate law enforcement to operate in a democracy. These two masked agents encountered Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse who worked at a Veterans Affairs hospital. Pretti was holding his phone, not a weapon.
Our analysis contradicts claims by senior Trump administration officials that Pretti was a, quote, gunman who threatened to, quote, massacre officers. Pretti has a phone in his hand and appears to be directing cars to pass. Another observer is shoved by federal agents, and Pretti steps in to defend them. One officer sprays Pretti with a chemical agent repeatedly before at least 3 officers tackle him to the ground. Several agents quickly surround Pretti. As they hold him down, one officer in a gray jacket reaches towards Pretti's lower back and appears to withdraw something. The same federal agent then steps away with what appears to be a gun. In the same split second, another agent draws a weapon from his hip.
In the videos, you can see this masked agent knock a woman to the ground. Pretti comes to her aid, getting in between both of them. The officer deploys pepper spray directly into Pretti's face. 2 agents grab Pretti and pull him to the ground. More agents pile on. Then during the struggle, while Pretti is face down and surrounded, the agents fire approximately 10 shots while onlookers scream in absolute horror. The official story was that Pretti was resisting arrest, that he was armed and dangerous, that somebody yelled, "He's got a gun," and agents fired self-defensive shots because they feared for their lives. Pretti was legally armed with a handgun, but some analysis of the bystander video appear to show a federal agent taking Pretti's gun from his hip before shots were even fired. The agent's masks make it difficult to tell who's who, which again seems like a design feature. They're doing that by choice. This is not a bug. And of course, Stephen Little Bitch Miller called Pretti a would-be assassin.
Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Pretti a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation.
Then later in the week, Stephen Little Bitch Miller changed his story and said CPB officers may not have been following protocol, which is an interesting way to describe shooting somebody in the back 10 times while they're down. Additional video surfaced showing Pretti in another altercation with federal agents. The masked agents jump out and tackle him to the ground. Pretti had been documenting and confronting masked federal agents for at least 11 days. Then they shot him. They refused to say who they were, and then they called him violent. They called him many things, and then the videos came out, and they changed their whole story. Then one of the commanders got reassigned. Greg Bovino orchestrated these high-intensity immigration sweeps in Democratic cities. There's a reason they're in Minneapolis and not in the state of Florida or Texas.
Again, it's back to choices. We just talked about choices. When someone makes the choice to come into an active law enforcement scene, interfere, obstruct, delay, or assault law enforcement officers, and they bring a weapon to do that, that is a choice that individual made.
And Greg held a news conference saying Pretti was violent and he violently resisted, and agents, of course, had to then fire defensive shots. Now, Greg's been removed from his role as Border Patrol commander and he's been sent back to California. Wish we could have sent him elsewhere. Both agents have been placed on leave. The Justice Department announced its Civil Rights Division is investigating. The body camera footage exists. State investigators are saying federal officials are blocking them from accessing evidence. DHS watched the body camera footage, and based on their internal review, they're refusing to release it to the public. A former CPG commissioner told ProPublica that the shooting could have been prevented. You don't say. And Pretti tried to help the woman who got knocked down. Agents could have told him to stand back. Instead, they immediately used pepper spray and created chaos that likely contributed to his death. Jesus Ochoa, 43, is a gun enthusiast who owned about 25 rifles, pistols, and shotguns, according to his ex-wife. Raimundo Gutierrez, 35, was assigned to a special response team that conducts high-risk operations. These two very masked federal agents who shot this ICU nurse who was filming them with his phone. They then went on to spend a week hidden while the government called the dead nurse a would-be assassin. This is where we're at. This happened days after a different immigration agent shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old mother of 3, also in Minneapolis. And if you're still here, thank you. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Every like, every share, every comment is just a reminder that we know the names now and we got to get them out. So stay subscribed. The investigation is just beginning. We're going to be commenting on it every single day. And make sure you remember every sub, every like, every comment is an FU to Katie and Stephen Little Bitch Miller.